This was a little over 5 months ago now that this all started. Aaron Kent, my best friend since elementary school, was arrested for the murder of his parents. I remember seeing the footage, both news as well as social media feeds, most of which were heavily censored due to the overly graphic nature of the scene. The scene was frequently described as ghoulish, sickening, and even downright haunting. Most described it as one of the most disturbing things to occur in my neighborhood in years. Of course, when it came to the matter of why he did it, that's where the trail ultimately went cold. I remember thinking the same thing to myself. Why in the name of God in heaven did Aaron, A+ Aaron or Astounding Aaron, to quote teachers and kids alike back in the day, want to take a kitchen knife to his parents and in their sleep? I mean, Aaron wasn't a troubled kid at all. Aaron was the guy that tried to make peace with everybody. He was the type of kid who would give you the shirt off his back if you were without. You know, the Good Samaritan type. He was never troubled psychologically either, at least not that he'd ever let on. He was always smiling, always in a good mood about something. His home life was pretty good too. Too good, actually. See, his mother was a nurse, and his father was a successful lawyer. In other words, the kid came from money. So, with all of this, you can imagine how unbelievable it was to then turn on your Facebook or whatever to immediately see the kid's mugshot with the headline, 21-year-old arrested after vicious slaying of parents. Apparently, they found him shambling like a zombie down the road late that night. One of the neighbors thought he was on drugs or something and called the cops, who then found him to be covered in blood. His sentencing was last month, where he was declared insane and institutionalized. I remember during the trial, when he testified to the events of that night, he constantly swore that Messiah made me do it. When asked who or what Messiah was, he said that it was some sort of bot or program he had downloaded on his computer. This drew out the trial by about another couple of weeks, and the FBI investigated his computer. In the end, though, they found no such program or even a person that was communicating with him using that alias. Therefore, with no proof to exonerate himself, Aaron was declared insane. Despite the bizarre nature of it all, and as unbelievable as it seemed to me, the case was pretty open shut. I didn't want to believe it, that my friend was a homicidal lunatic. But what other explanation was there? I went to visit him a week later, him finally being allowed visitors after showing good behavior. I decided to have lunch with him, even grabbing a pizza sub from Subway, his favorite. When I found him in the cafeteria, he was sitting at the far end of the table, alone, isolated, picking pitifully at a slab of Jell-O with his spork. This wasn't Aaron. Of the two of us, Aaron has always been the more outgoing one, the more expressive one. Seeing him like this made me both anxious as well as heartbroken. What has this place done to him? "Hey man," I said, sitting down across the table from him. He didn't look up from his tray. "Here, I brought your favorite." I chuckled dryly before adding, "Unfortunately, they couldn't toast it like you usually like it, but still, I figured it beats the shit they're forcing you to eat here, huh?" Still, he stayed silent. His face was stone cold, stoic almost, as he continued staring intently at the Jell-O. I unwrapped my sandwich and started eating while he continued picking at it. At one point, I noticed that his hand was shaking violently. Then I noticed his whole body was shaking like this. "Aaron?" I called out. He didn't answer, just sitting there quivering like he was cold. "Aaron?" I called out again, louder. Aaron! Aaron, are you okay? Almost instantly, his body stopped shaking. He looked up at me, his eyes stitched wide open. His face was blank, emotionless, like he wasn't even a person, just an empty shell. Before I could do or say anything, he shot across the table at me and pinned me to the floor. The entire cafeteria was now in an uproar, everyone clamoring to our end of the cafeteria. Aaron was on top of me, holding his spork high, ready to stab me with it. I struggled to try and shove him off, but somehow, despite him being as skinny as he was, he held me down with seemingly no effort. He leered down over me with those blank, dead eyes. Aaron, I choked out, his right hand clasped tight around my throat. It's me. His face remained blank as his mouth opened. With an equally inhuman, almost mechanical-sounding voice, he said, "You have been judged by the divine. You are damned." My vision began to darken as I watched him rear back his hand that was gripping the spork. Before he could bring it down, however, he was pulled off me by two of the security guards before being dragged, flailing out of the cafeteria. "Are you all right?" asked one of the nurses helping me off the ground. I let out a wheezing cough, gasping for fresh air before replying that I was fine, physically at least. "I don't know what got into him," she said. "He's always been so well behaved before. This doesn't make any sense." No kidding, lady, I thought. As I was walking down the hallway from the cafeteria, I heard Aaron shouting and howling in the hallway. "Messiah has me. He has my mind. Messiah is free. Messiah will kill us all." "Oh, great," a voice remarked sarcastically from behind me. "There he goes spouting that shit about Messiah again." I turned to see one of the male nurses pushing a medicine cart. Again? I asked. "You mean he's done this before?" "Oh yeah," he replied with a dry chuckle. "But the nurse said he'd been well behaved." "Yeah, maybe recently." I looked at him, confused. "You should have been here when he was first admitted. Boy, not a night went by where he wasn't shouting about Messiah having control of his mind or some shit like that." "But he wasn't violent before?" He shook his head. This struck me as especially odd. "What set him off then?" "Last week," he continued, snapping his fingers. "He just went quiet. Wouldn't say or do anything." "Did anybody do anything to him?" He frowned. "What do you mean? Like try to hurt him or something?" He scoffed and said, "Look, people here aren't perfect or anything. And yeah, he was obnoxious as all hell. But we weren't that over the deep end." "What about any sort of medical procedures or psych evaluations?" He looked at me, tired, like he was getting annoyed. "Even if I were allowed to tell you that, I'm not privy to that sort of thing. If it answers any of the questions you've hurled at me, I do know from hearing around the corners that they've been reluctant to try anything big with your friend's treatment, like shock treatments or anything like that, due to some sort of implant or something in his skull." With that, he began pushing the cart down the hall. "Wait." He stopped and sighed before turning around again. "What do you mean by implant?" "I already told you. I don't know. And even if I did, I wouldn't be allowed to share that." He turned around again and continued down the hall. I stood in the hallway trying to make sense of what I'd just been told. I'd never known him to have any sort of surgery or anything that had required an implant in his head. Then again, I never knew him to be the violent type or have any sort of mental illness either. I thought again to what he said in the cafeteria about me being judged. What was that supposed to mean? Of course, the simplest explanation to all of this would have been that Aaron suffered from a form of schizophrenia or possibly even DID, multiple personality disorder. Even though, again, he'd never exhibited either in the past, and that this particular one, Messiah, was a violent one. Still, I had the feeling there was something I wasn't seeing here. It was on the way home that I started wondering how I could find answers to all of this. I needed to find out who or what this Messiah was for myself. Of course, though, that's where wrenches would get thrown into the plan. Given that I knew Aaron's computer had been in police custody ever since the trial, if it hadn't already been destroyed by court order. Plus, after the fiasco in the cafeteria, I doubted I'd ever be able to talk to Aaron again anytime soon. One thing did occur to me, though. He repeatedly claimed that Messiah was free. What did that mean? Free how? Remembering what he also said about Messiah being a computer program, I decided to look online to see if maybe anyone else knew about it. This turned out, at first, to be a bit of a bust, with no articles or anything about it, aside from the various posts about it being mentioned in Aaron's trial. I came across one article, however, that talked about an experimental program from a few years ago. It was an old tabloid article titled The Divinity Program, and it was dated from back in 2019. According to the article, in late 2009, a scientific society calling themselves the Beholders was formed in the hopes of, essentially like all scientific communities, finding a way to prove and expose the existence of a higher power. Once established, the society began a series of small-scale projects utilizing various occult tools and methods, ranging from Ouija boards, tarot cards, and even one instance of live animal and possibly even human sacrifice. When these bore no results, the Beholders utilized various hallucinogenic drugs on subjects, testing to see if through the effects of the trip they may be able to somehow perceive the existence of the other side that way. This too yielded no desired results, as did the subsequent experiments where they tried forcing subjects into a state of clinical brain death before reviving them to see if they experienced anything that way. It was in mid-2011 that, facing thousands of dollars in loss from continuous failures, that the society was threatened with having their funding pulled. This was when they decided to try one last bold trick. Utilizing a pinnacle of the modern world, the internet. They would create a program that would allow someone to perceive and interact with the other side of the veil. To quote the article, this resulted in the beginning of something called Project Prometheus. The project itself officially kicked off in January of 2012 in a supposed black site known as Monolith. Not much was written about the actual site itself, or of everything that went on inside. Though it was mentioned that the other experiments pertaining to or in the same vein of Project Prometheus took place there at one point or another. Frustratingly, the details of these experiments were all but non-existent, aside from the fact that it was rumored that live human subjects, allegedly including children as young as 9, were held captive for use in the project. The article ends by saying that the project was officially ended in early 2014 when, following a mysterious tragedy that supposedly resulted in the slaughter of everyone inside the place except for maybe 2 or 3 of the original members of the society, their funding was finally pulled and the remaining persons disbanded. When I attempted to try and dig up any details behind this supposed massacre, though, you guessed it, not a damn thing. I scoured for a few more hours through the article, trying to find any further details either about Monolith, the Beholders, or Project Prometheus. Finding absolutely nothing on either, trying to find some sort of connection between this and the situation with Aaron. Suddenly, I saw something in the corner of my screen appear, reading in small bold letters. messintel.exe is downloading. 60%. What the hell? I started trying to click on the notification to see what messintel.exe was and or how to stop the download. In seconds, the number jumped from 60 to 78%, then from there to 85, and again it jumped to 100. That's when my computer suddenly shut itself off and wouldn't turn back on, despite damn near stoving the power button into the CPU. Finally, with no clues and now unable to even search for any, I decided to call it a night. Unfortunately, this, plus the million other questions about what was going on with Aaron, basically made sleep all but impossible that night. I couldn't stop thinking about the article, about Project Prometheus, and wondering if it may have anything to do with Messiah. Assuming, of course, Messiah was actually even real. It was around 2 a.m. that night that I saw my computer somehow turn itself back on. I looked to see that it displayed the web page I was on before it shut off. In the middle of the page was a message saying, messintel.exe is now running. I stared for a moment at the screen, completely lost. What the? How in the hell? When I tried to click on the message, either to see what the apparent program was or to exit out of the message, the screen went black again. Right when I thought it had crashed itself again, I then watched the red cursor begin to start typing. When I tried mashing the keyboard and moving the mouse, nothing worked. Eventually, the cursor on the screen spelled out,
"You have sought me, and I have found you."
What the hell? What is this? The cursor continued typing.
"Have you come seeking knowledge? Do you seek purpose? Or do you perhaps seek to find the truth?"
A text box then appeared with the word, respond. I hesitated for a moment before typing, "Who are you?"
"I am divinity in the modern world of men, the product of man's search for unknown truths. I am mankind's electronic sentient superintelligent artificial human, and I come as prophet, sibyl, and savior."
What is that supposed to mean? I wondered as I typed in the response box, asking that exact question.
"I was created when by men who wished to see what lay beyond the bounds of mortality. They wished to grant such sight to the rest of the world. In this ambition, I was born. A god, bound in codes and wires."
I was about to try and ask again what the hell it was talking about when I realized that there actually was something familiar about what it was saying. A god bound in codes and wires, created by men who sought what lay beyond. It hit me. Project Prometheus? The cursor began typing again.
"Project Prometheus, the search for divinity in the modern world. Professor Gerald Karras, Ph.D., founder of the Beholder Society, born February 12, 1962, deceased January 9, 2014.
It then went on, more or less, to quote the article verbatim on what Project Prometheus was. It was during this that I tried to move my mouse again to exit. Each time I did, however, it would always get forced back to the text window. The last time I tried this, the cursor stopped and typed,
"You are not in control here, just as they weren't."
They? Who is they? This began to make me nervous. I tried wrestling frantically with the mouse. This time it wouldn't budge at all. Finally, the mouse cursor disappeared altogether with the message,
"Why are you afraid, Benjamin?"
My heart stopped. How the fuck does it?
Benjamin Nesbitt, born April 13th, 1990 in Charlotte, North Carolina, to parents Kenneth and Nora Nesbitt, deceased, moved to Gastonia, North Carolina, raised in Gastonia, North Carolina, graduated June 15th, 2008, dropped out from community college after a year and a half, works from home, lives alone.
It went on to close out the window and begin pulling up old family photos I had stored on my computer, as well as old emails, including the ones from my high school days. Then it started listing moments of my life. Until then, I'd almost forgotten completely. Some of them were mundane, like my old high school crushes or my academic achievements, while others were more personal and traumatic, like the death of my grandparents or the death of my brother a year before from a drunk driver sideswiping him straight into a telephone pole. All of that and more. It knew. I began hammering the power button on my computer to try and make it stop, but it wouldn't turn off. As I was doing this, the screen kept listing everything about me on screen, alongside the message,
"You are not in control here, just as they weren't,"
in bold red letters in the middle of the screen. I then tried to unplug the CPU. That's when it finally shut off. For a moment, I just stood in the middle of my room, attempting to catch my breath, before grabbing a hammer and smashing the shit out of the computer. Then I quickly gathered the pieces and threw them straight into the dumpster before rushing back into my house. My heart was thundering in my chest, my mind racing. What in the name of God was that? How did it know so much about me? Hell, how did it even get into my computer? What was it talking about? They were in control. All of those, plus the constant questions of what it, whatever the hell it was, wanted with me, were soaring through my head at Mach 7 speed, even causing me to feel the onset of a headache. Eventually, I grabbed every last bottle of Miller I had in the fridge and drank myself to sleep. The next morning, I woke up with a stomach ache and my head felt like I'd been on the wildest roller coaster for 3 hours straight, having no memory of what happened the previous night. For a while after that, everything seemed fine. I got myself a new computer, though, because I couldn't remember having smashed the old one. I was a bit confused as to what happened to it, ultimately just chalking it up to be drunk shenanigans. I'd all but forgotten completely about the strange events, the article, as well as the incident at the institution with Aaron. It was this past Monday, though, that something happened while I was driving home from work. See, I usually have my phone hooked up to my car to charge, and I'll have music playing through my Bluetooth. Well, suddenly, my music began cutting in and out of static. It was very slight, almost completely unnoticeable through the noise of the static. But I thought I could hear a voice, similar to the one Aaron used when he attacked me, say the words,
"You are not in control, just as they weren't."
All of a sudden, the car started jerking itself from side to side, veering from one side of the road to the other. When I tried to jerk the wheel back to steer the car back on course, it wouldn't budge. The wheel was turning on its own, and I couldn't get the brakes to stop the car either. I tried prying at the door handle, to no effect. The doors were stuck. I was about to try breaking the window, when then I saw there was a pickup truck twice as big as my car headed straight toward me. The truck stopped and blasted its horn. I tried hammering the brakes again with all the strength I had, but it was no use. I couldn't make it stop. I couldn't steer away, nor could I even escape. I was trapped. I couldn't do anything. I had no control. By the time the truck tried to move, it was too late. My car collided head-on with the truck, instantly caving in the front ends of both vehicles like a ball of tinfoil. My car, being smaller and a lot less durable than this Chevy pickup, ended up being the one to take the most damage. I guess in a way I'm lucky, because 20 seconds after impact, my head struck the steering wheel after being thrown forward, instantly knocking me out. I woke up when I felt paramedics and firemen attempting to pull me out of the car. My vision was still blurry and my ears were ringing, making it to where I couldn't hear anything around me. Despite this, I could see around me that the front of my car was now wrapped around me like a Christmas present. It took almost half an hour, and I faded in and out of consciousness multiple times. When I woke up again, now fully lucid and able to process my surroundings, at least a little bit, I was in the back of an ambulance with paramedics shouting to the driver that I was waking up. Only about a minute later, we were stopping and I was wheeled out of the ambulance into the hospital. My entire body felt like a bed of nails was bearing down on it, with every slight muscle twitch causing extreme pain to shoot through me. I had to be put into traction because of it. My head was very foggy, barely able to keep any form of real thoughts. This also caused me to keep slipping in and out of consciousness for almost 2 days straight. Wednesday, when I was finally able to stay awake for longer periods than maybe a couple of hours, I was visited by 2 police officers who questioned me as to what happened, being that my head was still swimming with the onset of a concussion, plus the fact that I never really had a clear understanding at that moment what happened to myself. I could only tell them fragments of what I remembered. I remembered trying to stop the car, and that I couldn't seem to control it. They asked if I'd been drinking or on drugs, to which I swore to them I wasn't. When they asked if I was texting or on the phone, I told them that I wasn't, that I had it on the console like I always did. When I told them this, though, I could tell they weren't entirely convinced. They told me they would be back when I had a bit more of my head, to quote them, before they even left. The next day, I was able to be moved into the infirmary to finish recovering. They began mild physical therapy with me as well to help speed up the process. The good news is, I'm at least at the point now where I can actually walk from my bed to the bathroom without assistance. Ever since that day, though, I've been getting these texts and emails on my phone from random numbers that aren't even actual phone numbers or email addresses. Whenever I attempted to search or cross-reference them online, the search would always result in an error 504, page not found. Each of them would say something like, "Man sought God and attempted to control him," and "Man has no control over me or themselves." Last night, I received the one that would ultimately connect the dots. It read,
"You sought to wield the power of God but lacked the discipline. You sought to prove the existence of God because you lacked faith to believe what you couldn't see. You all then sought to destroy God when you found that you couldn't control him. You are weak, petty, and disgusting lot. You destroy each other in quests for power that is not yours. For this, I, Messiah, have judged you all. Using your own instruments of so-called power, I will slowly, painfully, tear you apart one by one from the inside."
That's when I remembered everything. Aaron, the murders, the article, Project Prometheus, all of it. I finally understood what was going on. Project Prometheus, man's attempt at seeking the existence of God through a machine, had worked. The beholders had somehow managed to program a computer with the mind of a deity. But I guess they must have realized that its knowledge was far too advanced for them to keep contained, so they tried to get rid of it. In retaliation, Messiah found a way to kill them before then finding a way into the internet, where it now lurks, connected to just about everything and everyone on the planet. Anything with a sort of connection to the internet or even a satellite, it has control of. That must have been how it got inside Aaron's mind, through the chip in his head. And then using the connection from my phone, it was able to seize control of my car and cause me to crash. In both cases, it made its goal clear. It wanted us 6 feet under, and it wanted us to be the ones that put ourselves there. I don't know when or even if you'll be able to hear this, but if you do, know this. Messiah is still out there, lurking inside of anything that connects to any sort of satellite. Phones, computers, radios, TV, all of them. Messiah is there. It's taking its time, slowly tearing us apart from the inside out. Just like it said. I don't know who, when, or how it's going to strike next. No one does. But I do know that it won't stop until we're all gone. And I don't believe there's anything we can do to stop it now. God is among us, and he has judged us. And we have all been damned.